you know. So could you speak into that a little bit more
Yeah.
in terms of what those what are the things that parents could be doing, right, and maybe should be doing that sometimes it's that could really further their kid,
Yeah.
you know, in school and in life.
Yeah, I think I think one thing that there's some context, I think, to understand here. I think parents for the longest time have always relied on schools to help them understand if their students are having learning difficulties or challenges, that the school will somehow discover that and help overcome that. And so historically, the way that that's been done is, we can go back a long ways and look at a traditional special ed classroom where every kid that had any kind of need that was beyond what normal would be, we'd put them in a classroom together. And that would be a very difficult classroom, and even maybe a multi-age classroom, right, where there were students of different age that had no business being together in a social context for learning. But that's how the schools managed that kind of problem.
It's kind of like parents were just hoping that the school would figure out if their kid had a problem or not, and if they did, the school had to kind of just deal with it on its own.
And I think the way that the schools have learned to approach that has changed drastically. So the success would rise and fall based on the special ed teacher. And then we've seen like a broadening of the programs and maybe more specific interventions. So we find out exactly what kind of help the student needs, and we'll pull the student out of the classroom just for a period of time, give them the specific things they need, and then send them back to the classroom. We've seen that trend happen, and schools try to do that more and more. I think the difficulty comes in how we see and even maybe label special ed, right? And so I think it's really a disservice to all students, because it's like you have to have a certain level of disability before we can help you, and if you fall short, too bad. You're not bad enough.
It's almost like there's this in-between zone, right?
Yeah.
It's like you're the smart kid, and then you are just, or you have a really severe disability.
Yeah.
And then in between,
right,
like, I'm not going to help you that much because you're not that smart, and it's kind of, you have to either lower yourself down or kind of go up. Right. Is that kind of what you're saying?
So I was saying it's really a matter of context. How do we see the problem? So if we look at every student as unique, and they are, and their brains are different, they're not all the same, and we look at strengths, that obviously all students have strengths, even ones that have profound differences, to appreciate what their strengths are. Part of what I write about in here is teaching to those strengths. So recognizing, let's say if you have a student that has dyslexia, you're not going to assign them to read aloud in class if they struggle to read. But what we know about students with dyslexia is they're actually really good in conversation. They are good at generating ideas. I mean, there's a role for them to play in the discussion where you can bring their strengths forward, and they don't see themselves as a person that really struggles. And at the same time, we work to integrate dyslexia strategies and therapies that help them.
So here's a question to that, because I like that you mentioned, and you gave a good example, right, of teaching to the strengths. I like that phrase.
Yeah.
And when we think of a student with dyslexia, I think what I often see, both in the classroom and even at homes at times, it's like there's an expectation that my kid has to read super well, right? Like, and because tests are that way, because the world is this way, and I have to, and they're not smart enough if they can't read really well.
Right. They're like, maybe they're incomplete because they have dyslexia.
Yeah, and then it becomes like a sense of, right, the student is he's an incomplete student then, right? Like, and then as a parent, like, I think the feeling that they have, and they often portray that, I believe, to the kid is like, you're not as good as I would have hoped you to be, right? And maybe for the student, he starts to feel